Oh God, he's a con man. He's an Iraqi con man. There's a lot of speculation that he's likely a double agent for Iran. And basically, he's the one, where I was saying you have 20 agencies and then there's one less than credible source. We used him at every turn, and he was head of this, American right-wing fabricated Iraqi National Congress.
Well, isn't it the case that the CIA had basically given up on him and cut him off, and so then he went to go work for the DOD? And this is where we start getting into the neocon faction here. Let's talk about who these American Enterprise Institute and Washington Institute for Near East Policy guys that ran this thing.
Well, I mean, essentially, during the Bush years, the CIA, in my opinion, served the role of looking, basically taking the fall for everything. That was their only purpose, whereas the DOD actually engaged in what are usually CIA activities and running that little show of extracurricular sort of illegal activities. You had Paul Wolfowitz, you had Donald Rumsfeld, and Douglas Feist, and above them, calling the shots, was Dick Cheney and David Addington and their cohorts in the oil industry and such. So,
well, you also had Wurmser and Bolton over there at the State Department in the first administration, right. And then later Dick Cheney's daughter Liz was sent over to play their role. Well,
Liz was sent over to play with the money that was being doled out to terrorists on our behalf, but nobody ever wants to talk about that.
I do. Are you talking about Jandala and MEK?
Oh, yeah. She was running the little budget out of state for that.
Awesome. We should try to publicize that angle more. She's seeking political power, Maybe I'll make a bumper sticker. Liz Cheney funds terrorists.
But think about this. What qualifies Liz Cheney to run this type of operation? What? Nothing other than being the daughter of Dick Cheney. It's almost like a crime family. They
all right, wait. We're skipping ahead, though. This is a whole other interview we're working on. Tell me about this. This is what Justin Raimondo calls the transmission belt of treason. Colin Powell, in fact, and of course he's trying to protect himself, war criminal that he is, but he told Bob Woodward that the Office of Special Plans, the euphemism for the Iraq desk over at the Pentagon, that this is Doug Feith's Gestapo office. They've gone over there and they've created a separate government. And that's what he was talking about, right, is this neocon cabal ensconced inside all the different departments.
Well, right, that's exactly right. And later it would be transformed into the Iranian Directorate, from which they were trying to find a way to, I think it was supposed to be Iraq and then, it was supposed to be Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, like, boom, boom, boom. But we got so badly, these guys got Iraq so bad, and they were so exposed by their lives and all that stuff, they were unable to complete the Iran element of it. But they had already started working the Iran angle, trying to tie Iran to uranium smuggling, trying to tie Iran to terrorism in Iraq against our soldiers, even trying to tie Iran in some cases in some plot with Al-Qaeda against the United States. So it's this one little cabal, and it's mainly a policy office, but they're using DOD resources to conduct operations that are not legitimately DOD territory and not legal for the DOD to be involved in, because there are certain requirements, like, for example, the CIA requires presidential findings on some things, whereas the DOD does not. So they were running black ops that's usually CIA territory, and they were answering only to the office of the vice president, that is, to Dick Cheney. So there was no oversight. Nobody knew what anybody was doing except for this small group of people. And, some of these people are graduates of the Iran-Contra scandal. So, I mean, they've already, we forgot another player, Elliot Abrams over at the National Security Council.
Ah, good call.
Let's not forget him.
Yeah.
So, you have essentially a very tightly controlled mechanism that's conducting illegal activities, reporting to Dick Cheney, and working for a budget that nobody has oversight of, and, actually cutting out every other agency that should be legitimately involved.
Well, I was going to ask you about Ariel Sharon's influence here, because Julian Borger, James Bamford, and Robert Dreyfuss have all reported that They had their own little office of special plans over there in Ariel Sharon's office. I guess they sort of had the same problem with the Mossad that the Americans had with the CIA, which was they'll lie but not quite good enough for our purposes. And according, I think, to Dreyfus's reporting, actually to all three of their reporting there, they say that they were actually manufacturing bogus intelligence in English for funneling into the same stovepipe here.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not the only ones. The Russians were also fabricating God knows what. Everyone's fabricating intelligence. You know,
The Russians were fabricating intelligence to help the Americans start a war with Iraq?
No. Oh. No, their focus was to make sure that whatever happens in Iran, they had complete control over it. Mm-hmm. But I'm going off on a tangent. What I'm trying to say is that you've got essentially what I call an intelligence laundering market. And, you know, that's why you have experts review the intelligence coming in, because you don't know if it's questionable, who it's coming from. And in all cases, most cases, you know, and yes, the you know, Ariel Sharon and his little cabal is very similar to our structure here, but it's not unusual, because you find that in a lot of administrations. Look at Tony Blair, same thing. You've got MI6 saying no, 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 and Tony Blair saying, and his little cabal saying yes, 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 and
right.
Then when it all comes out, he blames MI6, Cheney and Bush blame CIA, Sharon blames Mossad.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, in fact, I guess Sharon didn't even need to blame Mossad because his role was never really that publicized. But Anders in the chat room points out that it's come out at this Chilcot inquiry over there in England that there were Israelis at those infamous Crawford meetings where the memos about the Downing Street memos about fixing the intelligence around the policy came down.
Well, and there were also Saudis. And the meetings about the various meetings in Rome and in Paris that involved the Niger forgeries had the Saudis, they had, I think, Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, and Italian intelligence. That in of itself, I don't know if that means anything per se. And remember, Israel is an ally of the United States, so Britain and Israel are both allies, so it makes sense that they're at the meeting. I think it's not as damning as it can sound. You know what I mean? When you take into account that we were talking about allies. It's like Britain and the U.S. had meetings with Polish intelligence, you know.
Yeah, except there was no clean break paper written for the Poles about how our first effort needs to be getting rid of Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, but Israel didn't want Iraq. Israel always wanted Iran. They don't care about Iraq. Iraq was not a problem. Iraq was America's baby, not Israel's. And
well, it does sort of seem like Sharon said, we'll help you lie the people into war with Iraq if you promise to hit Iran next.
Well, that's why I keep saying that my opinion is that it was supposed to be a drive-by shooting kind of thing, 1, 2, 3, you know. You hit Afghanistan, you don't finish it. You go to Iraq, you don't finish it, and you have to, each stage you declare victory, and then you go right to Iran. And you know, they were able to leave Afghanistan in entire disarray because Afghanistan is already in disarray, and so nobody was really going to expose that as much as they were with Iraq. You know, mission accomplished. What mission accomplished? You've got sectarian violence. You have all this stuff going on. You know, whereas in Afghanistan, it's much more like the Wild West. So it's hard to say who's fighting who, what's going on.
Do you think that Dick Cheney and Richard Pearl and Paul Wolfowitz ultimately were the Ayatollah Khomeini's useful idiots? There was a CIA and a DIA report that came out that said that they went back over all the evidence and looking back over 10 years or something, they convinced themselves that not only did Ahmed Chalabi tell the Iranians, it must have been Feith or somebody who told him, that the Americans had broken all their codes, but actually they think, as I think you said, a possible double agent, that he was a possible double agent that maybe lying the American people into war with Iraq was all about Khomeini trying to get back at his arch enemy Saddam Hussein, and that America's war was really all about what the Iranians wanted.
Well,
Never mind Ariel Sharon or Dick Cheney or anybody else. They're just puppets on his string.
Well, this is what I've been saying for years. You're talking about a chess player and a checkers player. You're talking about guys with a lot of hubris and very little understanding of strategy and a complete disregard for international laws and such.